Hello, and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast about murders and so much more. We will talk about anything strange, anything that goes bump in the night, and pretty much anything that amuses us.
And on that note, we need to mention that this podcast is not safe for work or delicate ears, so do be discerning who you listen to it with.
We also want to let you know that you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so look for us there.
I am Shannon Lawrence. I am a writer, mom, wife, student, procrastinator, and you can find me at thewarriormuse.com.
My name is MB Partlow. I am a writer, an avid reader, an organizer extraordinaire, a mom to kids, cats, and a dog, and I call bullshit when I see it.
Hello.
Greetings, Earthlings.
It's November. I like November.
It's what happens in November.
Oh, here's what's funny about that. I've been so stressed out and distracted and all of that. My son came up to me and he was like, I only have 2 weeks till my Thanksgiving vacation. I was like, no, nuh-uh. And then I went and looked at the calendar, like, prove him wrong or something. And then I was all, oh, fuck. And then I was looking at it and I was all, oh, that's my birthday. Because my birthday's on the 20th. So it's within a week of Thanksgiving, typically. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, holy shit, I'm not ready.
For either?
Not like I ever do anything
yeah,
for my birthday anyway. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'm not prepared. I know. This year's going way too fucking fast. And then, yeah, Thanksgiving, I just want to do something at home. We're not doing a family thing unless I told my family after years of doing it all. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving and Christmas. I used to do Christmas. My mom did Thanksgiving. Then my dad got very ill. And then my mom had to take care of him. And then I did Thanksgiving and Christmas during the stress of all that. And then last year, nothing. And then this year I was like, yeah, I'm not doing it again.
I kind of liked
anymore.
That nothing year.
I was so not stressed for once. And so then, but my middle brother was like, we could do it. And I'm like, you know what? If you want to, you do it. But otherwise, I'm just going to be home with my family. I don't even...
Did he consult with his spouse before saying that?
I don't know. I think she was sitting next to him.
Okay, then that's reasonable. Though. It wasn't like a conversation just the two of you were having.
No, it wasn't. So. It was at the big family gathering.
We used to have a great tradition for years and years. For Thanksgiving, we would go to our friend Richard Margie's house. Margie's the one who took the picture of your dad with the dogs.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I've met her.
Yes, you have. So anyway, we would always go to their house for Thanksgiving, and then they would come to our house for Christmas dinner. And then they moved. They had the audacity to move.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just up in Arvada, but still. Might as well be the moon.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a variety of friends come over because I was already hosting a billion fucking people anyway, so what was a couple more?
Exactly.
And you know what? I enjoyed it for the most part then, but I'm done. There are things that happened and I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want all the work to be on me anymore.
I don't blame you. It was...
I'm sure there are people out there who are also the oldest of however many kids. And eventually you get really tired of it because you're not anybody's parent except for your own children.
Exactly.
So...
Christmas dinner took a turn. We started doing just different stuff for Christmas. We would do, one year we did barbecue. We've done all appetizers. Yeah.
I did potluck near the end when I was already getting tired of it. I was like, just bring some shit and I'll make some meat.
Thing 2 said, how about I make Christmas dinner? Mm-hmm. I don't think she'd ever cooked a piece of meat other than bacon.
Well, now she cooks all the time.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, not recently, but yeah. So she's been cooking Christmas dinner for a few years now. And I got to tell you, it's nice.
Yeah.
You have the great meal and... It's really funny because she's always like, no, I'm going to do the whole thing. And then we get closer and I'm like, okay, I need to do something. Can I? And she's always like, would you please make the mashed potatoes?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why I have 2 children who can't make mashed potatoes.
Is it that? Here's the funny thing about that. Mashed potatoes is such a integral part of our, like we make an entire bag of potatoes and it matters because we're potatoes family, right? And at first I was like, that is actually what I would have mom do. Like, all right, just finish the potatoes. Like, I boiled it, you finish the potatoes or whatever. Mm-hmm. Because then I felt like, what if they're not good enough, right? And then after a while, then I was like, whatever. I'm going to make potatoes and they have a problem with it. And they have a problem with it, especially because for a while it's dairy free.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was using stock instead of dairy in it. And it was really good, actually. Like, that's what I discovered.
That is a good way to make it. I also saw somebody who steeped or simmered chopped up garlic in olive oil and used that.
Nice.
So instead of butter. And I think they also used some stock.
Here's a fun fact, too, though. When I was at the restaurant and I was filling in for Cook, it took me a couple. Like, I usually just made them make the mashed potatoes for me because I didn't know how to use the big kettle thingy they had. It wasn't on a stove. It was this big thing with a knob. It was a giant kettle because that's where they were cooking like the meats for the pot pies and stuff in too.
Oh, I have no idea.
And I was just like, I don't know how to do that. So then every time so they got really good actually about like leaving me mashed potatoes. Whoever the morning cook was, they'd leave me mashed potatoes because I was like, I want to do it. And also because I've been doing mashed potatoes for so long that I had a way because unlike them who weren't moms,
yes,
they followed the recipe or whatever, right? And I was like, no, I know how to make mashed potatoes. But
no, we make them to our personal preference.
Yeah.
Or to our family's
It's probably different every time at this point. But yeah, I make it right. So I was like, I'm not following this recipe. I like how I make mashed potatoes. So yeah, it was always something somebody else had to do. So anyway, mashed potatoes are apparently
Yes. And I have to make two kinds of gravy.
Oh.
Because I make turkey gravy.
Yeah.
I do the make-ahead gravy. And I also do mushroom gravy.
Okay.
Because thing one doesn't eat meat, so.
Oh, that's valid. Yeah.
But the mushroom gravy is it's easier than the turkey gravy.
I will say I don't really make gravy. I did it in the beginning when I was young and gave a shit. And then after that, because I usually don't eat gravy. I love gravy, don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things that I cut out like, milkshakes when it's just one of those natural things I cut out because it's unnecessary, right? Because believe me, the potatoes are good by themselves and the turkey better be. And so, so I stopped. So I'd get like a little jar of the pre-made stuff for anybody who wanted it, but we don't even use it. My
theory is I'm eating gravy once or twice a year. So
right.
I'm going to eat the fucking gravy.
Yeah, I just got out of practice.
And there's the, I really do like the make-ahead gravy. You roast the turkey wings. Then you put them in a pot with like onions and carrots and herbs and stock. Boil that, then strain everything out and just finish off the gravy with flour and butter and it freezes. You can freeze it for up to a month.
Up to a month. I did get really good at pre-prepping like Thanksgiving and Christmas stuff.
Oh, yes.
Which even was like chopping up potatoes, the white potatoes, and then putting them in the cold water in the fridge. And that worked really well, actually, because then you just pull that bitch out.
If you have the fridge room.
Yes, and we have an extra fridge out in the garage.
Okay, I have the same thing, but I have way too many condiments. Oh. I have like a whole shelf that's just, the eggs are on that shelf and all the jams and the pickles and the olives and the butter, and that's a whole shelf.
We basically have drinks out there in the fridge, so if I need to, I can pull that out and just fill up the fridge. You'd be
surprised how much room beer can take up.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple, but again, we're not we're not big drinkers, so... No. In fact, I have basically a mix. It's like one of the cardboard 6-pack type things, but there's like a different beer in each slot because, once it went, I just put it in there. I went out trying to find that pumpkin jalapeno beer.
Yes.
And still haven't found it. And I got to one place though, and he was like, we literally just sold out of that 2 days ago. And I was like, no. So I'm not getting any this year. And I didn't get any pumpkin beer. And for me, I know some people, it's all about the pumpkin coffee or whatever, but I don't do coffee. And so every year I like to find one pumpkin beer to try. Mm-hmm. Right? And that was how I found that one. And it was so good.
I tried a couple. That's the best one.
Oh, yeah.
Because I love it too.
Because it like burns and cools at the same time as the jalapeno.
It is so good. And Perry's Pizzeria and Tap House or something like that. The one up north had the Voodoo Ranger pumpkin beer on tap. So I had like 2 pints of it, fresh from the tap. That's even better. But then I was like, I got to get me some of that. Poof. It was gone.
I wonder if Perry still has some.
They do not.
Damn it.
I'd already tried. But apparently it came out, they released that beer a little bit early this year, so it sold out early. So
Damn
it was
it.
gone from most places way before Halloween.
Okay. Well, and I thought of it in September, so I should have looked for it in September because it sounds like it would have maybe been out then.
Yeah.
So, whatever. No pumpkin beer this year, whatever.
Boo hoo. I had some pumpkin beer. It just wasn't as good. I also had pumpkin hard seltzer.
Oh, I don't do that.
That's a freaky beverage.
No.
I
I
like a
don't
hard
even
seltzer.
especially
but-
like a soft seltzer. So,
See, I'm a big seltzer.
yeah. I don't like it.
You gotta say it right. You gotta say seltzer.
Seltzer.
Yeah.
I've been watching Ray Donovan, so soon
Oh
I'm going
my
to be talking
God.
like the wife
I love her. Oh my
by the
god.
time I go to bed.
How far are you? Probably
I am
already
in
gone
at
past.
least the second season.
Okay,
I'm still
have you-
enraged at him about everything that
yes.
he does, and then he does a nice thing, and then he does,
Yes.
then he's a dick.
So have you seen where they're shopping for the new house?
Yes.
And she just about takes out the neighbor. Is it the neighbor?
Oh yeah. In fact, I just watched that yesterday, so that's where I am.
That made me laugh. So
Well, they were
it
so
was-
uppity and awful to go.
They
Okay, she has
were.
a very strong Boston accent, and
Oh, yeah.
there's these. It's the nice neighborhood, so it's the uppity neighborhood, and the woman is totally in the guise of complimenting her, mocking her.
Yes.
I think it's so cute, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they start copying her, and then she doesn't feel good, and they're like, "Oh, should we call a car?" And then she just goes, "Shut up," and they're like, "What?" And then.
Yeah.
Shit hits the fan. And I'm like, yay. But she's dealing with being married to that fucker. So
Okay, now I gotta write
so I'm
down-
watching
write
that
down.
on Peacock so people know. Because
Right.
I don't have cable or satellite or anything like that. But it's streaming on Peacock. But yeah, it's really good. I love Liev Schreiber or Schreiber,
Yeah.
however his name
Yeah.
is. He's a large man. Like I forget
He's
until
big,
he's
a big
there
guy,
that he's
yeah.
this big guy. And then
Yeah.
you see him and you're all, and his legs are really long. You're just like, I would not fight with that man.
Nope.
So
There aren't many.
there are
men-
very few people I wouldn't fight
That's-
with.
okay.
Frankly, there's very few people that, like, what is her name? Michelle Rodriguez?
Yes.
I'm like, her I wouldn't scrap with. Because I'm pretty sure she could hand me my ass.
We have a different way of measuring people up.
Do we? I look at
I
how...
hardly ever think I wouldn't fight them or I would.
Well, I wouldn't go toe to toe. I don't want to fist fight anybody, but honestly, when I'm mad, I could be faced with Sylvester Stallone
It
and I'd
wouldn't
get in their
matter.
face.
Yeah.
There's very few people like Danny Trejo wouldn't fuck with him. Okay.
No.
Right. But again, very few people, and actually Liev Schreiber, I still fuck with him because I don't think he's a menacing person. He's just a big guy.
Yeah.
And again, I'd be mad. It wouldn't matter. But I have gone, here's the thing. When you are fiery fucking hot, like I am, and because, like, I don't care how big they are, they will back the fuck down from you when you get mad.
Oh, because you get that insane glint in your eye, and they're
Yeah.
like, "This person isn't just mad."
I
They're
mean, you've
fucking
seen me
crazy."
mad, but you still haven't seen me over the top mad.
No, I'm
And-
good with that.
Yeah. So, no, I have never had to get into a fist fight because every time I have reached that point, they have backed down, which is good. And I'm
Yeah.
like, someday, I always expected, especially as a teenager when I was really fiery in my 20s, I was like, someday it's not going to work. But so far it worked okay.
That is good.
Because I get scary mad. I do. So
Did I ever
it's
tell
not
you?
a good thing.
No. Did I ever tell you why I started watching Ray Donovan?
No.
It's because I love Grace and Frankie,
Yeah.
or Frankie and Grace, whichever way. I can't remember which way it is.
I can't either.
And the Lily Tomlin character, Frankie, is always fucking talking about watching Ray Donovan.
Oh.
And I finally went, I give up. And at some point during the shutdown,
Yeah.
whatever cable service it was on, I can't remember what network had it. It might have been Showtime. But they made it free for a month or for 3 months
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever. And so I started watching it and then I stopped. So I'm not much. I think I finished the second season and now I need to go back and rewatch a couple episodes to get in the swing of things. And
Oh yeah. It makes me feel like Mad Men made me feel watching it. You have a charismatic lead who's a complete fucker.
yes.
But you can't help but not root for them in many of the situations.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
It's very emotionally confusing for me because I'm so fucking mad at him every time he cheats on his wife. And that's honestly not a spoiler. So just be ready. He fucks everybody. But then
and he still doesn't.
And he gets mad when he thinks she's cheating on him.
He still doesn't sleep with everybody he could, but
for the most part, he sure does.
By God, And
I'm just like, I hate you every time. I don't handle adultery well. I don't find it entertaining. There's no entertainment value for me in anybody cheating on anybody. And so I maybe get more frustrated about it than other people do. I don't know. Because I get pretty worked up about it. So every time he does that, I'm like, you piece of shit. It would have been so easy not to do that.
You could have just kept it in your pants.
You could have. And I don't want to hear the whole PTSD and I'm not going to say why because I feel like that would be a spoiler. But no. Then go to the counselor for sex addiction or whatever it is. I don't care. I don't want to hear that as an excuse, honestly. So yes, I ended it on a bad note last night and now I'm fixated on that. I was like, I need to watch another episode. And I was all, I need to go to bed. It's 4 a.m.
Yes.
But yeah, that's what I've been watching. What have you been? I'm sure I'm going to talk about it again though. Cause usually I just binge watch something that's done but this one is going to take a while like Mad Men did for me. Cause I can't binge watch this one quite so much, though I have.
Yeah. So I am a huge Jackie Chan fan.
Oh yeah.
Enormous Jackie Chan fan. So I was like, the other day I was just like, I need a Jackie Chan movie. Uh-huh. Now, I really liked Shanghai Noon because
Owen Wilson.
I love Jackie Chan and I am unreasonably fond of Owen Wilson.
He's funny.
He is hilarious. So, but I was like, no, I want to watch something I haven't watched before. So I watched one called Bleeding Steel, which came out in 2018. So I wanted something where he was a little bit older because I wanted to see how he's doing. Because,
dude, someday arthritis is going to set in with that man and all of him's going to be broken.
All of him has been broken and I would bet he has arthritis.
He's got to have pain.
So, but this was interesting because there was an actress in it, like he had a young female partner who did a lot of it. What are you? Oh,
sorry, the light is reflecting off my Jeep out front and it's going to trigger a migraine. So.
Oh, yes, then move. But anyway, so he is still doing all the stunts, but it was, he's a more mature actor and it was a role where he wasn't the love interest. He got crosswise with the bad guys and his daughter was raised by a foster family, taken away from him, given away, raised by a foster family. So he follows her and he is protecting her and she doesn't know it.
Oh, okay.
And you see him when she's in college and he's there and he's behind the line serving food. And it was kind of you know what? If you like a Jackie Chan movie, you'd like it.
So what's funny is this is a thing that these older action stars have been doing a lot. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, they've all done the movie where they're protecting a daughter, a mentee, whatever. Yep. It's like what they went back into, which it's just funny to me. I haven't analyzed that yet. That just made me think of it. But so funnily enough, though, we watched Jackie Chan for family night. We did Rush Hour last week and then Rush Hour 2 this week. So Chris Tucker, I miss Chris Tucker, honestly. Oh. He's obnoxious, but he's funny.
Yes.
And do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? And then Jackie Chan, do I understand? And he's like, no understand a goddamn thing you say.
I liked it when he goes, nobody understands coming out of your mouth.
That's right. So yeah, we watched that. Because, I love a Jackie Chan movie, too. That man defies gravity. He really does. You watch him, and I'm like, how much core muscle must this little man have to do the things he must be? It's just, people can't see. I'm making a ball with my hand. The middle of his body must be pure muscle.
Yeah, because the stuff he does is incredible. And I always love the outtakes.
Yes.
Because you get to see where they, how many takes it it takes him to get some of the stunts.
I will say I was disappointed in the outtakes from Rush Hour 2, because like Shanghai Noon and Shanghai whatever the second one was, because there's a
Shanghai
second.
Nights. It was not as good.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Those are the action things and some funny, but they were really pretty brief after the Rush Hours. So I imagine like the DVD probably had like extra ones, and we own them, but we streamed them instead of.
Sometimes it's just easier.
So yeah, it was just a couple goofy ones. There weren't a ton of the outtakes from, because I'm used to like, the first one I saw was Rumble in the Bronx. That's when I first even knew who Jackie Chan was. I was working at a movie theater at the time. We got it. I even know which, it was an Auditorium 4. So I want to find that one and watch it. Again, I was actually thinking that, like, with the kids or whatever. But I seem to recall it being a little darker. Like, it wasn't a comedy. It was full-on action.
A lot of his are not comedies.
Right.
The ones that he did before he came to Hollywood are generally more serious. Not all of them, but generally they're more serious.
Yeah.
So, and then he came here and started doing
It's like
Rush
the difference in watching a Chow Yun-Fat movie compared to what he did here, which was... It was always still action. He did some comedy, right? He did at least one. But anyway, he did a movie with Mira Sorvino. That was not a comedy. But his stuff from what would have been Hong Kong is like the Hollywood. That was a lot darker. He's done some more brutal stuff. So, same thing. Like they were doing straight up action.
So I love that we're having our little Jackie Chan fan fest.
Hey, listen.
So what have you been reading?
I read 2 novellas, actually, instead of a book. So they were friends' books, but they were good. So I did read Chopping Spree, which you already talked about on here. Yes. And tonight is that event, by the way. Oh, yeah. So too late for people listening, but I already put that information out there last time. So just the Q&A with her. That's by Angela Sylvain. And yeah, just like it's set in a mall and shit's going down and there's some...
It's really good. Yeah. It would make a good movie.
It would. It would be an entertaining movie.
In case anybody out there is listening with any connections to Hollywood, Chopping Spree, excellent 80s slasher
cover
movies.
Too.
Yes.
And then I read a romance.
Ooh.
It was like a special Halloween romance she put out. It's My Weekend with Death by Angelique Migliore. You know what? Okay. I don't think I've actually heard her name, even though we're friends.
My Weekend with Death by who?
Angelique Migliore. And anyway, it's a gargoyle. No, a grotesque. Sorry, there's a difference between a gargoyle and a grotesque. So it's a grotesque.
What's
romance.
A grotesque?
Like a gargoyle, but it doesn't have a water spout. I think she actually says what the difference is. I think a gargoyle has to have a water spout, but a grotesque does not. So it's the same thing, but with no water spout.
Huh.
I know. The shit you learn.
We are so happy to be educating the general populace.
So the grotesque gets death. This Reaper wants to take a break. And so she wants to kind of disappear. So she gives the grotesque power, but he's not supposed to actually reap anybody. It's just so that it'll be on the chart, like on the map that this power exists. So she can sneak away. And then he's had a crush on a human in his grotesque form.
Of course.
Because he was a human who got turned into... So anyway, it's a whole thing. I'm not going to go into all of it. But It's a romance. It's sweet. I really don't have much else to say because everybody knows I don't really read romance. So I'm not going to...
That's fair.
But yeah, both of those are really good. And they're novellas and they're not expensive and people should check them out.
Yes, I agree. Have you read Later by Stephen King?
Mm-mm. I'm really behind with him.
I read one a couple of episodes ago that was more of a mystery. Mm-hmm. This one, Later, is not. There's actually a reference in it, and I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a reference to it.
Okay.
At least to that world.
Often after a certain point tie everything together.
Yes. And it doesn't really, it's a reference. It kind of grounds you. But I thought it was really good. I mean, I don't automatically love everything Stephen King writes. I almost always enjoy it. I almost always like it. But this one I really, really liked because the main character sees ghosts.
Okay.
But it's a really different take on it because he talks about The Sixth Sense, that movie. And he's like, here's the thing, you can't tell. He goes, sometimes you just absolutely can't tell walking down the street. If you see somebody on the other side of the street, you can't tell if it's a ghost or a real person because they look like they did when they died.
Right.
So if it's somebody who just fell down and had a heart attack, then
The Sixth Sense.
They're just going to be wearing the clothes and they're not going to look any different. Now, there are a couple that really scarred him because they had terrible accidents.
Yeah.
And so he sees this person standing there like with his head cleaved in two because he was in an accident. And it gets really convoluted. His mom is a single mom and they have a lot of financial difficulties while he's growing up. And he's writing it from, I want to say he's in his mid-20s and he's looking back to when he was like 9. And the first episode where he records it is where his neighbor's wife died.
Uh-huh. And
he helped his neighbor find her wedding rings.
Okay.
So it's not all lovely little stories like that. There is one that won't go away. Because usually you see them, he sees them, and eventually they just fade away. They stop paying attention, and all of a sudden they're just gone. But this one will not leave, and it starts following him.
Sometimes they're persistent.
Oh, yes. So that's all I'm going to say about it, except to say I really, really liked it. It was scary, but not super scary. Mm-hmm. Highly recommend.
Cool.
But I also read something I wasn't inordinately fond of, but I'm not the audience for it, so that is okay. It was The Chronicles of Crestomancy by Diana Wynne Jones. Apparently, it's a multi-volume universe. And this was, I don't know how I came into possession of this book, but I was like, I like a fantasy. This looks good. Like I said, not the audience. I believe it's a YA book. The beginning of the book setting up the situation bothered me a great deal. I don't know what that sound was because it sounded like your ice maker.
It might have been ice pouring into an empty thing because I pulled out the actual container because it wasn't making ice earlier.
But anyway, the beginning is to set it up. It's the situation the main character is in. And it reads like child abuse, the way he's treated, the way his uncle treats him, the way his mother treats him. Mm-hmm. If not outright abuse, which it's really close, it's severe neglect.
Okay.
And that just bothered me. And I was like, I don't like this as a setup. Could we not make him sympathetic and care about him without
having it be this awful?
Yeah, without torturing him. Yeah. And it went on for so long. I mean, granted, I'm thinking now
even Harry Potter was kind of painful how long that was dragged out. So this sounds like it's way longer.
Well, plus you got a bit of it at the beginning of each Harry Potter novel. This was it was all that, but it was all at the beginning of the one novel. It just, although I did like his sister, he has an older sister, and she comes downstairs one morning with her suitcase. It's like, all right, I took my exams. I'm off to college. See you all never. And then his mother and his uncle are like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And she's like, I'm going to college. I finished my school here. I'm going off to college. And they're like, you can't afford it. She's like, yes, I can. I'm smart enough and I got a scholarship if I'm careful with my money. So bye. And just gets on the train and leaves.
Yeah. Nice.
And it was so they couldn't stop her.
Well, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So
again, I know there are a lot of people out there who love that book, and I hope I haven't offended anyone. I'm not going to read any further in this series. It was just not for me.
I don't care if you offended anyone. We are not going to like all the fucking books.
Oh, no.
So just putting that out there.
True. I mean, I hope I didn't trash it. But
it just wasn't for you.
Yes.
I don't enjoy reading about abuse. Again, the Harry Potter stuff even bothered me because every time he had to go back home, it stressed me out. And I couldn't imagine being a child who was dealing with neglect or abuse and reading those.
No.
Because they don't want to be reminded of that in fiction, in a fictional escapist fantasy world, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean.
And I'm reading another book. I'm not going to talk about it unless I finish it. It's a kind of a pulp horror from the 80s. Mm-hmm. And It's really, nothing's tying together yet. Something happens at the very beginning, and now people are getting out, picking up axes and killing people. And I'm like, I need to see a connection pretty soon here, or I'm going to just stop reading.
Oh, no.
And this was one of those grab it off the shelf. Cover looks interesting.
Hey, sometimes those work out and sometimes those don't. And are we ready to do our
yes,
thing?
I think you're going to start this week.
I am. Okay, so I'm going to start today. If you're thinking of starting a podcast or even just starting to research it, Buzzsprout is your go-to source for information and hosting. They have tons of videos and write-ups on everything you need to know about recording and distributing a podcast, and they even provide easy ways to get analytics on how your podcast is doing. We use Buzzsprout for our podcast hosting, and through them, we've been able to connect with tons of resources and distributors. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and help support our show. A win-win. Not only do they help you get started, but they also do small things to encourage you, such as awarding you badges as you hit various milestones. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. I did the Servant Girl Annihilator. My sources were Mental Floss, ServantGirlMurders.com, Historic Mysteries, and Wikipedia. And I'm going to say, so that I don't forget to do it later, ServantGirlMurders.com goes a lot deeper into what type of offender this was and the actual profiling and stuff like that and deeper theories. So if anybody's interested, that would be the place to go. In 1884, Austin, Texas was a growing urban center. It had exploded. It had been just a little podunk cow town, right? Middle of Texas. But it had grown into a busy, heavily settled area of over 14,000 inhabitants at this time. So there were restaurants, hotels, factories. There were 3 colleges there at this point. Like,
really?
It just exploded, truly. And they were in the process of building the Capitol building. And I think it would take like 2 more years or something like that before it was done. So city growth doesn't just bring with it restaurants and other novelties and fun things, right? You have people coming from all over the place. So you attract the sickos too. It happens.
Devil in the Way City.
That's right. And with this throng of citizens, they're more anonymous. They can hide in plain sight. Bad shit happens. So, on the morning of December 30th, 1884, Molly Smith was found outside her employer's home in a pool of bloodied snow. It's important to point out here, because it changes later, all of the victims I'm going to mention until I say otherwise are Black women. And at this point, this was post-Civil War. Apparently, it was like Wheat Town or Wheat Ridge or something. There was a town that a lot of people had moved to after the Civil War and all that was done. And so that area was close to Austin. So there were a lot of servants, but not slaves, is what I'm saying. And there were also, of course, poor white servants and stuff like that. There was a mix.
Okay, so my question is, it snowed in Austin?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen.
She was found in snow, not often.
That was the first thing that I was like, whoa.
So she was a cook. She was about 25 years old, and she had been dragged from her bed in the middle of the night. Her head had been split open with an axe, and she'd suffered stab wounds in her legs, arms, chest, and abdomen. And they described her, she was bleeding so badly from all of the wounds that she was in just this puddle of blood in the snow. Just bloodied slush. So her husband had been hit with axe as well. So what this person would do, they would break in, they would hit him, I assume with the blunt edge of the axe maybe, and then take the woman out of the house each time. He woke up screaming, right? Because then he's got blood pouring down his face and his head's been split open a bit. And then he goes looking for his wife. He finds her outside. And the bloodied axe was found in their room. As you've said in the past, it's a crime of opportunity during this time. There's an axe right here in the yard. Yeah. They take that axe, they go inside. May 7th, 1885. There's been a cooling down period here, as they say with serial killers, and they wouldn't have said it back then. Eliza Shelley, also a cook, was found after having been dragged from her bed. Her bloodied sheets were actually found beneath her, so she'd been dragged out kind of with those sheets, however that happened. The killer had almost entirely cut her head in 2 with the axe. She'd lived in a cabin behind her employer's house with her 3 children. The 3 children were unharmed. They were in a different room. The killer was ramping up now, and the next victim, Irene Cross, was found May 23rd, so not even a month later. Irene was also a black woman again. She had been stabbed so many times with a knife that she was almost scalped, and her arm was nearly severed. I don't believe an axe was used on her, from what it sounded like. Maybe he hadn't found an axe, but he went in anyway.
Was she also a cook?
I believe so. Either way, they were all servants.
Right.
Of some sort.
I'm
so
just
whether that was a cook or a laundress.
Targeting the cooks.
Yeah. That will actually come in later a little bit for one of the suspects. Yeah, she had almost been scalped. Her arm was also nearly severed. And she lived long enough. She was still alive once the police got to the scene and said they talked to her, but there was nothing about what information she might have given. I bet she wasn't making much sense.
No.
Then she died. At around the same time, author O. Henry, he lived in Austin.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And he wrote a letter to a friend saying, quote, "Town is fearfully dull except for the frequent raids of the servant girl annihilators who make things lively during the dead hours of the night." I'm like, I'm glad you're so entertained by it, O. Henry.
I was like, great, I can never read that again.
Yeah.
I'm like, you fucker.
Right? Doesn't that sound so blasé?
People could die for your
entertainment. I know, that got me too, so I needed to say it. For the record, newspapers and police didn't refer to the killer as the servant girl annihilator. That term, which we now use for him, was created by O. Henry. They were actually calling him the Midnight Assassin. That's press, most likely, not the police. They don't usually give the name. The press does.
Yes.
Or the Austin Axe murder. The next victim was an 11-year-old girl.
Oh.
Yeah, Mary Ramey. She was dragged from her bed as the others had been out to a wash house where she was raped and stabbed through the ear with an unknown item. This occurred on August 30th, 1885. Her mother was also attacked. I don't know if they were in the same bed because a lot of these people were sleeping in the same rooms as other people.
Okay.
You know,
right.
That's how it was then. They were servants. But either way, her mother was also attacked, but she was just knocked out. And it seems like maybe it was just easier for him to drag out the smaller person.
I'm wondering if it was the same person.
Well,
were the first 3 women raped?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of confusing because the reports didn't even usually say it, but it sounds like unless he was interrupted, there was rape involved. Okay. But since I couldn't confirm it, I didn't say it.
Okay.
Bucking his previous MO, the killer took out a couple, Gracie Vance and Orange Washington, in the cabin behind their employer's property. Orange would be the only man murdered by the killer. They had both been bludgeoned. It was September 28th, 1885, with the Austin Daily Statesman actually said Grace had been beaten almost to a jelly.
Ugh.
So, again, he was knocked out, there were 4 people in this cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And all servants. Knocked out. I assume the man is going to be the biggest threat, so he's going to be the first one knocked out.
Right.
But the other women in there were also bludgeoned and raped. So this man took time. He was escalating and he was becoming much less wary of being caught. Yeah. And that's a disorganized offender, right? So anyway, but Gracie was the one he dragged outside and did his whole thing. And it was a rock or a brick that he beat her with, depending upon which report you read. So, yeah, he just beat her to a jelly. One of the women that he'd attacked inside actually came to and fled the scene and went to get help. And also with all this noise happening, the employer, William Dunham, I think he was an attorney, and several neighbors woke up and they came out while the man was still there and chased him, but weren't able to catch him. He knew the streets of Austin really well.
Okay.
So he just disappeared into them. Once again, bloodied axe was found in the room, and in her hands was a watch that didn't belong to anybody. So she had obviously fought back. She grabbed this watch, so that was found in her hands as well. The victim who'd fled for help said the killer had talked to her he said, "Don't look at me, don't look at me, look away from me," So did speak. But here's the thing, like they're saying that nobody described him then. I couldn't find descriptions. And then like 2 articles just had people described him as all the following things. So like this person said he was black. This person said he was white. This person said he was yellow. So I'm assuming they meant Asian, with blackface on to disguise him. So there was all sorts of, there was no consistent report. Huh. There was the woman who had 3 children in the other room. Apparently one of them did see a man enter the cabin, and he said he was short, he was black, he was a large man. So that was like the most, I don't know, significant description that I heard from any of them. Up to this point, all the victims had been black and had been servants, like I'd said before. But on Christmas Eve, the Annihilator murdered 2 white women in separate crimes. The first of these was Susan Hancock. She was a well-respected woman in the area. Her head had been split nearly in half by the axe, and a metal object had been inserted through her ear into her brain. She'd been dragged from her 16-year-old daughter's bed. Her daughter was not there. She was just sleeping in this other room away from her husband, and murdered in the garden. But the assault had been loud enough to wake her husband up in the room he was in. And he confronted the killer in the garden, and he threw a brick at him, and the killer fled. Killer did not fight him. But instead of chasing him, he stopped to help his wife and call for help.
Right.
Okay, so it's theorized that during the fight, he went through the yard of May Tobin. This was a pay-by-the-hour establishment that May Tobin had, just to be clear. And a confrontation occurred with a woman named Eula Phillips, and she was white. What I couldn't determine, she was with a man, but it sounded like it wasn't her husband outside this pay-by-the-hour establishment. Okay, so this sets the ground for some things later on. And it's thought that he followed her home afterwards, because an hour after Susan Hancock was found, Eula Phillips was attacked in her home. Same sort of thing. The husband was injured in the bed. He was bludgeoned. In fact, he barely lived.
Wow.
It was a close one for him. She was dragged out into the alley. They lived in their in-laws, or like an apartment behind their in-laws, something like that. So she was dragged out into the alley, and her arms were weighted down with wood, with timber from nearby. There was a lot of construction happening in Austin. And she was raped and she was murdered. So he hadn't gotten to finish with Susan Hancock. Yeah. Even though she did die. So during this time, police had thought there was only one killer, but they started thinking there might be 2. And we know, right, from that people usually attack people the same color as them, right? That's just consistent. That's why most serial killers are white men, yada, yada, yada. They thought, well, there might be 2 people. There might be a gang, this might be a roving gang. But the MO stayed really consistent. The favored weapon was the axe. 5 of the women had a sharp object inserted through their ears into their brains. And there was similar posing each time. They were dragged outside. They were, for the most part. All were attacked while sleeping in their beds. Most being knocked out before being dragged outside, mutilated, raped, and murdered. The axes were weapons of opportunity. So the one that was an axe, I assume there was just no axe in that yard, or there was a knife instead. So, and there was a knife involved with a lot of them too. So that was his. They weren't finding they were finding the bloodied axe on scene or the bloodied rock or but the knife was obviously his. So police brought in Pinkerton detectives.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
Our favorite, the Pinkertons.
That's right, the Pinkertons, and walked the streets at night with bloodhounds because they thought maybe the bloodhounds would be able to sniff out the killer. The police force had actually been tripled because they were getting a lot of criticism. Are you not going after them? I found old newspapers, actually. Are you not going after them because they're killing black women or because they're killing servants? So anyway, it got tripled so that they could always have police all over, because otherwise there were like 2 or 3 cops on at a time. I mean, this is post-frontier city. It grew faster than the police force did. And they put out a midnight curfew. There were 24-hour saloons, and those had to close at midnight. People started trying to be home by dark, that sort of thing. So everybody was terrified. Even though they hadn't attacked a white woman yet, everybody was scared.
I'm sorry, I'm cackling at the idea of 24-hour saloons.
Right? Ugh. So, and citizens created neighborhood patrols. So they kind of got that neighborhood watch thing going. Everybody wanted to catch this killer. In fact, one man almost got lynched, but they did get him away. In all, over 400 men would be arrested or brought in question for the murders. And one of those was Eula's husband, Jimmy Phillips. And bear in mind, Eula's husband, she was the last one killed. And her husband was the one who barely survived. So had clearly been attacked.
How did he do that to himself?
Or she fought back. I don't know. So he was taken to trial. It was thought he was a copycat killer. And I understand why they thought this, though. I will say they suddenly have 2 white women murdered. 2 well-to-do white women who were not servants, after a bunch of black servants were attacked. So that's a very significant change in MO, but then the murders were done exactly the same way. So they were like, you're a copycat killer. You went after your wife. It's because there were rumors she was cheating. And again, where was she found? Outside Beethoven's home, which was a rent by the hour. So he was convicted of her death. Luckily, when it went to appeals, it was overturned and he was set free. But at first, the police said it wasn't him. That, sometimes the DA gets something up their ass. Yeah. I've actually been the recipient of that. Hancock's husband was also tried, but went free due to a hung jury. So again, they thought they were both copycat killers the same night, an hour apart. And he had been hit too, because the men who were in the bed and even the women were always bludgeoned to knock everybody out. Just went clunk, 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 right? Here's an interesting thing. So he went to a hung jury. He was actually defended by John Hancock, John Hancock, pro bono. They were not related, even though their last name was the same. But John Hancock was a well-known, legal eagle in Austin at the time, or in the area.
Wow.
So he took the case pro bono because he was like, he didn't do it. So, hung jury. That means some people still thought this man did it. Mm-hmm. So, what I thought was interesting, she had been dragged from her 16-year-old daughter's bed. And it made me wonder, did they fight that night? Which I could see being a reason they thought maybe he'd done it. There was evidence that Moses Hancock, her husband, was an alcoholic, and she had actually written him a letter, which they found in her things. It didn't look like she'd ever given it to him, so it was probably going to go to him soon. And she said that he needed to stop. She would always love him. She would always be his wife, but that she was leaving because of his alcoholism.
Wow.
Also brought to trial was the boyfriend of the first victim, Walter Spencer. He was quickly acquitted, which actually, that one surprised me because late 1880s, this was a black man. Wow. And he was actually acquitted, and the two white guys, one was convicted and one got a hung jury. And I was like, maybe Austin was, maybe I don't understand. Austin was a better place to live if you were black, perhaps? I don't know. Anyway, that one surprised me, and so I needed to throw that one out there. So he was acquitted, just like that. So at one point, two white brothers who'd been found with blood on their clothes were arrested as well, but couldn't be connected with the crimes. And they let them go, so they weren't even taken to court. And I'm like, okay, but does anybody want to tell me why there was blood on their clothes? Were they butchers or what?
Did they
Nothing. I could find nothing.
Cut themselves shaving?
Right? That seems very suspicious to me. So after Eula and Susan, the Annihilator never struck again, leaving the town wondering who it had been and why they'd stopped when they were so obviously escalating. Yeah. They were getting what they would be called frenzied, just like Jack the Ripper doing 2 in one night, right? And so, but all of a sudden, done. There are many theories about who the Annihilator was, including that he was the same person as Jack the Ripper, because it stopped and then it started over in London, a couple years later.
Oh.
A Malaysian cook named Maurice was a strong suspect. He sailed to London in January 1886. The last murders were in December 1885. So just a couple weeks after the double murder. And then at the time he was a cook at the Pearl House Hotel, and the murder victims for the most part lived adjacent somehow to the Pearl House. They were easily accessible from there. The Austin American-Statesman actually published a story implying the link in November 1888 while Jack the Ripper was still killing, that they were one and the same. So Maurice left London right after the last Jack the Ripper attack, because there was a reporter who was going out to talk to him, found out he had left. He'd left the city. Yeah. And it should be noted that H.H. Holmes, who's also accused of being Jack the Ripper, right? People like that. He didn't commit his murders until 6 years after the Annihilator, which is interesting because then that's also after Jack the Ripper, but I still don't believe for a second that H.H. Holmes is Jack the Ripper.
No, I didn't know.
In the book, Jack the Ripper, The American Connection by Shirley Harrison, she hypothesizes that James Maybrick was both the Annihilator and the Ripper. He was in each place at the time of the murders and had written in his journals that he'd killed prostitutes, which made it sound like he is a Ripper suspect. And so again, she's connecting the two. He died in May 1889 of arsenic and strychnine poisoning that it is believed was administered by his wife. So that's why he's been a big theory with Jack the Ripper, is because they think she knew what he was doing and she finally just poisoned him.
I don't know.
So, well, and of course I didn't look into, I've looked into Jack the Ripper in the past, but
I'm just wondering why he would make the jump from these serving girls
Right,
these
to
servants
prostitutes.
to prostitutes.
Unless serving girls because they were in separate buildings in the back and maybe there wasn't an active prostitution setup. I don't know. You think there would be in an ex-Cowtown? Right. I just got the disbelieving. But I don't know.
The hairy eyeball of
but
disbelief.
Here's this one.
Okay.
This is the one I'm actually the most behind. The show History Detectives did an episode on the murders in 2014 stating their theory that it was a black cook named Nathan Elgin. Cook. He was 19 years old at the time and was shot by police in February 1886. So a couple months after that last murder, after he dragged a woman out of a saloon and started beating her. He dragged her outside and started beating her, but it was with people around. But again, this person had been escalating and had done it. Yeah. So anyway, when police confronted him, he advanced on them with a knife, and one detective ended up shooting him, and he died the next day because he had a bullet wedged against his spine. They never got an answer as to why he was beating the woman. Nobody knew why he had gotten set off against her.
Wow.
And anyway, there was physical evidence that lent credibility to being Elgin. The perpetrator of the crimes had gotten entry to each home quietly enough not to waken anyone else. Part of that was because they went in barefoot. They would slip their boots off outside and go in barefoot. And there were footprints left behind at some of the scenes. They were missing the small toe, the pinky toe.
One who went wee all the way home.
And so here's Elgin, he goes in to be processed, and he's missing the pinky toe on the same foot.
Okay, that doesn't seem like it could possibly be coincidence.
But see, interesting. Again, the one's Malaysian, the one is white. Again, the crimes were, most serial killings occur on the same race. So he was a black man, and he was a cook, and he was attacking cooks, and he had the pinky toe. And he was brutalizing a woman who he dragged out of a bar. And again, that Servant Girl Annihilator website that I mentioned goes way into detail on Elgin and his background and some other things, things that he was doing in his regular life that made him match the type of offender in a profile. So again, if anybody wants to read that stuff, it's interesting. I sunk into it, but I wasn't going to go into all of it.
Yes.
It's also important to note the city was still actively growing. And so, like I said before, there are construction sites everywhere. That would have brought workers in from all over the place. I will say Elgin had been born, I believe, in that Wheat Ridge, Wheatville, whatever that town was, and knew Austin, had lived in Austin while it was still a very small town. So he'd been there as a child throughout it being built up. And all of that, he knew the streets intimately. I was like, did all the cooks in the area, did servants know each other? Like you see movies like this where in a small town they would, right? Because they would be going shopping and they would see each other and stuff like that. But this is a bigger town, but they were all in the neighborhood.
I was going to say,
so they would be shopping at the same place probably.
Yeah.
So I could see how they would get on his radar. I still don't know how Susan Hancock, we know how Eula did because there was confrontation. But Susan Hancock, that one's so far outside it. Was she rude to him? Did she go to I couldn't find anything. Like, had she been to the Pearl Hotel restaurant? Had there been a run in there? Had she criticized his food? I don't know. There's nothing.
Right.
All the things I would want to investigate were actually doing it. So anyway, web detectives have continued trying to tie the Annihilator murders with crimes occurring in port cities and eastern seaboard in case it was a person who left. Were there similar crimes? Nothing's been proven. There's nothing concrete yet. It's interesting to note that there were other attacks preceding and during the murders that may or may not have been done by the same person, and I could only find reference to them in a few places, but that included some of those old newspaper clippings that I looked at. And in those newspaper clippings, they were talking about there being other attacks on servants who didn't end up dying from it.
Okay.
But they were attacked in similar ways. So the first and second occurred in July 1884, and this was a few months before that first murder, which was at the end of December 1884. So in both those instances, black women were stabbed in the face while they slept, but they survived. So in August of the same year, another black woman was hit in the head with a smoothing iron while sleeping. So again, trying out shit to knock her out.
Yep.
Okay. So she survived too. And then another black domestic servant was hit on her head in November 1884, a month before. And so this sort of thing makes sense. They escalate. Like, you find out a lot of serial killers started out as just peeping Toms, and they started breaking in. Then they started stealing underwear. Then they, and it escalates. This is a pretty fast escalation, honestly. This feels like trying out different things. First, this knife they own.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if he didn't have other behaviors that we just can't... We can't track it now.
Yeah.
But did he have other behaviors earlier that were leading up to this?
Right, and again, that Elgin person, there were problems before. There were fights and criminal activities.
Right.
So that's why that one makes a lot of sense to me. So these victims that I mentioned were Black women who were also servant girls. But in March 1885, after the other ones had started already, right? After it started becoming murders, 2 Swedish domestic servants were attacked but lived, and I couldn't find more details on, okay, was it an axe attack? Were they raped?
Yeah.
Were they dragged outside? Nothing. Clara Strand and Christine Martinson were their names. Clara Dick was wounded in August 1885. Attacked in her bed. They were all attacked in their beds. I just couldn't find more details than that. And one of the newspaper clippings insinuated there had been several other assaults on servant girls in the area leading up to one of the murders, including the shooting of a Swedish servant girl, which I would think was a separate one. But then if this Swedish servant girl was attacked, were the 2 Swedish domestic servants attacked? Also that's separate. You know, again, it's so hard. It's impossible to find the details. So there's a lot of questions left on that one, but... Wow. At the very least, it really makes sense that the women who were first stabbed in the face, then hit with an iron, were the precedents, right? And then he went, oh, here's an axe. Why don't I try that? Those ones make a lot of sense to me as being the same person.
Yes.
Escalating.
The one who was shot, no.
And then when he wasn't caught, no, that one doesn't for me. And I'm not sure about the 2 Swedish domestic servants because it doesn't match the MO. Mm-mm. But the rest of those that I mentioned, Black servants. So
yes, and like you said, it was a growing town, growing fast. It brings a lot of people in who can just blend in.
Right. And so you've got one man attacking all these other women, and they think, well, why not? I like these little blonde, super pale.
Yes. It can always be blamed on the other guy.
Yeah, of course. Even though, because they don't know anything about MO. They don't know anything about this person would stick to this. They were like, no, these domestic servants are being attacked, and so domestic servant meaning cook, laundress, right? So I'm going to go after these domestic servants that I noticed in that tingle my ningle, and then
I'm sorry, that tingle my
tingle my dingle.
Okay,
you like it?
I just had never heard it before.
Oh, I just made it up on the spot.
I know, but I'm just like that was pretty. Anyway.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll slalom, instead of segueing, we'll slalom into the story of Peter Stump.
Stump.
Yes. My sources for this are Wikipedia, the Social Studies Foundation, Bugs Bunny, Modern Farmer, and the National Institute of Health.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but so I have a reference to Bugs Bunny in here, so I... quoted it.
Okay.
I know I'm going to read through and it probably won't come out and I'll be like, well, shit, I swear there was a reference to Bugs Bunny.
We'll find out
maybe
soon.
I was just thinking about Bugs Bunny.
Fair enough.
Much as I enjoy setting the scene for a nice historical piece, this one takes place in the mid-1500s. So that's kind of a stretch for me. You know, I can't...
You're like the 1800s. I stole this one from you.
Well, I can't talk about what music was being released.
In the 1500s, it was a wonderful classical composition.
So I did come up, I did do some digging around to set the scene. Leonardo da Vinci died in 1519. That's also when Magellan sailed around the world and proved, oh, here it is. It's around like a you head. That's the Bugs Bunny quote. Bugs Bunny did this.
Hear that, flat earthers? Even Bugs Bunny
knows. European countries developed the slave trade with Africa to supply labor for sugar and tobacco plantations in South America and the Caribbean and cotton plantations in North America. In 1517, Martin Luther nailed his protest to the door of the Catholic Church. That is a gross oversimplification of what happened, by the way, and I'm well aware of it. But
that's the story on its own.
That's its own thing. So Protestant religion begins to emerge. In 1534, England, and again, for all my history buffs, this is a gross oversimplification. In 1534, England is wrenched out of Catholicism and plopped down in Protestantism under Henry VIII.
I'm just going to throw out there, since it was mentioned that we were following up the Civil War here, 1500, that's 300 years worth of, just to remind people how long that was going on, the slave trade, African slave trade to be specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So just wanted to blow that one up a little bit.
This was definitely a very exciting time to be alive.
I guess.
So Peter Stump was probably born in or around 1530 near Bedburg, Germany. A lot of church records were destroyed in the 30 Years' War, so they aren't entirely certain. There are variations on his last name, and Wikipedia lists other aliases such as Abel Griswold, and with different spellings. He may have been given the last name Stump because his left hand had been cut off, leaving only a stump.
Okay.
That's because that's what you do. You name people after their most prominent physical characteristic.
I mean, I don't, but...
So he became a well-to-do farmer in his rural community. His wife died... I don't remember what his wife died of, if we even know. He had a 15-year-old daughter named Sybil and a son of indeterminate age. Never says what his name is or how old he was when he died. It is important, even though I kind of made fun of it earlier, it is important to note that Stump was a Protestant in a mostly Catholic area, and which had most recently been decimated by the Cologne War, which is also known as the Sewer War, because I believe it was the Catholics attacked a castle by going in through the sewer. That's not just a made-up movie thing. It actually happened. So locals started turning up dead, and rumors flew about a wolf-like creature killing livestock as well as humans. So the description is greedy, strong and mighty, with eyes great and large, which in the night sparkled like unto brands of fire, a mouth great and wide, with the most sharp and cruel teeth, a huge body, and mighty paws. So I need to know if anybody else is right now hearing in their head Little Red Riding Hood saying, "Grandma, what big teeth you have."
And if they weren't, they are now.
They are now, as they should be. Actually, I came across this because I was researching the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And that's how I came into this. I was like, what? Someone was arrested for werewolfery? That's what it was called. It became a problem. I mean, people started banding together to travel to and from this town. Travelers would stumble across victims' remains in the fields outside of town. Jeez. And apparently it happened more than once. I mean, it was plural, victims. It was terrible. Lost children were assumed to have been taken by the wolf creature.
Great.
And despite the best efforts of the locals, they were unable to trap and kill the creature for several years. So this went on for a while. And in this time, wolves were a very logical thing to fear.
Yeah.
Because they were around, they were big, they were hungry, In 1589, a group of men with their hounds finally cornered and surrounded the creature. And the 1590s is considered the peak of werewolf hysteria in Germany and France. I did not know there was a hysteria to have a peak.
There was a vampire hysteria. There was
a werewolf. So anyway, when the men came forward, because I'm assuming they let their dogs... probably tree isn't the right word, but they let their dogs corner the creature. So when the men came forward to make the kill, they couldn't find a wolf. What they did find was Peter Stump. And there's no record saying whether the hunters claimed to have seen him change from a wolf to a man, which you would think would have to happen, or whether he was just in the really wrong place in the woods at the wrong time. Threatened with torture, though, he confessed. Oh, my, did he confess. He confessed and confessed and confessed. Confessed to killing 13 children, 2 pregnant women, and 1 man.
Okay.
According to legend, an anonymous translated pamphlet. So I think I talk about... do I talk about this pamphlet later? The pamphlet was originally written in German, There are no copies existent today. There are only 2 copies of the translated pamphlet into English. And we all know that nothing gets changed in translation.
Ever.
So according to this anonymous translated pamphlet, Stump confessed that he sold his soul to the devil when he was 12. A mere slip of a lad. The devil said...
Listen, in the 1500s, 12, you were getting married.
Yeah, that's true. You were grandpa at 14.
That's right.
So the devil said, wait, there's more. And threw in a bonus, as generous lords of darkness do.
We do.
Sure. Okay, so it wasn't when he was 12. It was later. He gave Stump a belt that would turn him into a powerful and deadly wolf-like creature.
This is where the belt one started, huh? This did become part of werewolf lore in some places. Yeah.
Yes. So wearing the belt, Stump went on a killing spree, including unborn children and his own son, who Stump apparently fathered with his daughter. Plus, he had a she-demon or a succubus as a mistress, and a good Christian woman that he seduced.
She wasn't that good then.
Apparently. I'm just saying. He also had a taste for livestock, and especially liked killing sheep and goats, although not his own.
They're smaller than cows.
Because he was a successful farmer. He wouldn't kill his own livestock, right?
Oh, sure. It wasn't competition at all.
No. Nobody was envious of Peter Stump. One of the allegedly damning piece of evidence was the fact that someone at some point had been able to injure the wolf and cut off a paw. And that paw corresponded to the hand that Stump was missing. Because that's another...
Yes. Yeah.
That has been in so many fables and fairy tales and old wives' tales. Tons. I've even seen it as a woman. It's an old woman who they cut off the wolf's paw and then they come across the old woman and her stump is bleeding. Anyway, no magical belt was ever found. Just saying. Not saying it didn't exist, but they didn't find it. So here's the thing. He confessed to all of this. So after being found guilty of serial killing, incest, and cannibalism, because after he killed his son, he ate his brain. So there's like almost a little hint of zombie in the air, but
it makes you smarter. Eat their brain, learn their things. Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, but ew. Okay, so he was sentenced to, and this is a quote from that fabulous pamphlet. He was sentenced to have his body laid on a wheel and with red hot burning pincers in 10 several places to have the flesh pulled off from the bones. After that, his legs and arms to be broken with a wooden axe or hatchet, again, with the blunt side. Afterward, they kept going.
Effective.
Yeah. Afterward, to have his head struck from his body, and then to have his carcass burned to ashes.
Well, you have to do that with werewolves, you know.
I did not know you had to burn them. I thought that
I mean, you have to do lots of things.
Well, yes. So while he's being tortured, his daughter Sybil and his mistress were also burned at the stake as accessories to his crimes.
They were victims.
Well,
he
no
had
shit.
a child with her.
Yeah, but
people suck.
People do suck.
Kill the dude. Leave them alone. They were finally they're like, yay, we're free. And then they're like, fuck, we're witches. I was like, what?
They were fornicators, for sure. That really seems to be, well, it all goes back to, did they know what he was doing and what he was?
If they here's the thing though, if they knew what he was doing, what were they supposed to do about it?
Yeah, because remember, poor Sybil was 15.
Yeah.
And granted, even though she was old enough to get married and have her own family.
He's murdering people. What power did they have to stop him from murdering? But that's the thing that is always a stretch with accessories to even modern day.
Yes.
You have to ask yourself, were they in such state that they couldn't do anything about it? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I have no idea. So I do have more, because there are all these quotes from this pamphlet. It was 16 pages long. It was published in London in 1590. And it includes Stump's crimes and includes statements from witnesses and neighbors. So you can find this online if you are interested in following this up and you want to learn. It was some really disgusting details. So It wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it should be mentioned, because Stump was a Protestant in a predominantly Catholic community, it is possible that he was targeted for the crimes because of prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
Because of simple prejudice. This was a time of superstition when people looked to the...
And he was a successful farmer.
Yes. And so they were looking to the supernatural for answers to unfortunate events. So you lose some of your livestock. Look, he's not losing any of his. It must be his fault. I'm losing mine. It's also possible that Stump was a serial killer who invented the wild yarn of being a werewolf when he was caught. There is a third possibility. This one blew me away. I hadn't heard this one. The third possibility is that he was a serial killer who actually believed he was a werewolf, and he could have suffered from clinical lycanthropy.
Ah.
Thus, the National Institute of Health reference. The definition is a rare variant of a delusional misidentification syndrome, specifically reverse intermetamorphosis, where patients believe that they are experiencing transformation or have transformed into an animal. So that's not limited to wolves. This year, 2021, there was a paper written about a man who believed he was turning into a buffalo. That was not the word you expected, was it?
No.
So
I'm becoming a kangaroo. Okay.
Yeah, well,
Cool.
So anyway, back to the 1500s. Wolves were plentiful and dangerous, and that was the logical choice of fearful, fearsome animal to turn into. And how his story ends, and there are woodcuts of this, and if I can remember, if I can make my brain work, I will post a picture of this woodcut. Mm-hmm. After Stump was tortured and executed, they took the wheel that he was attached to a wheel to be tortured. And because when you're spread eagled on a wheel, it's easier to rip your flesh off with the red hot pincers.
Sure.
So they attached the wheel to a pole. They also put an image of a wolf on it. And at the very top, they put his head.
That's because the citizens were as sick as the killers back in the day.
Apparently. The pole was then displayed in Bedburg as a warning to all.
Yeah. Eventually, it was just a bleached skull.
Yeah. Oh, the stench must have been... It looked like, from the woodcut, that other people were being tortured at the same time. I have no way of knowing.
I bet they were. I mean, that's the thing. There's this. It's in that era where they were like, "You have stolen a piece of bread. We shall now slowly pull your entrails out through one small hole in your body and strangle you with them afterwards while breaking your finger." You know, like it was. It was. Let's brutalize people as creatively as possible in the name of the law.
And there was a very. It wasn't always in the name of the law. A lot of times, it was in the name of religion.
Yeah. Oh, God,
there was a very caustic remark about how, wasn't it amazing that, because I believe it's a religious organization and that has one of the copies of the pamphlet. So they're like, oh, what a shocker that Catholic Church preserves something that shores up their view of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just passing that along. Just saying.
It's not my own private commentary whether I agree with it or not.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, I was just so stunned that someone could be tried
for werewolfery.
Werewolfery.
If you can be tried for being a witch, you can be tried for being anything.
I guess so, but I don't know why. Being tried for a witch, not that I agree with
the
it.
Malleus Maleficarum, the witch hammer. I feel like it was around there somewhere.
Were people tried for being vampires?
Probably. It was good to look up.
I'll make a note. We'll look that up. You may be hearing that in a couple of few episodes down the road.
Well, yeah, that'll probably get into the disorders that made them sensitive to sun and all that stuff back then. I'm sure somebody, I don't remember.
I'll just toss out words like I know what they mean.
Cool. While you do that, I'll randomly hiccup.
Okay.
As I did while you're speaking, so I probably can't edit that out. Oh, well.
Do you want me to ask this week's question?
Do it.
Okay. So, having absolutely nothing to do with either one of our stories, we would like to know, what is your favorite fall activity?
Yeah, because it's November, and I love
It
November.
is.
We still have some leaves outside, even.
We do. I love the sound of dried up leaves when you're walking through them.
Yeah, I like it now. We can hear even like when Amazon delivers
Yes.
something or whatever, you hear the
Yes, that little
crunch as they come up.
Yep.
And then, although the people across the street that just moved in are about to get a rude awakening because there's always a lawn in a neighborhood that all the leaves kind of blow into because they're at the pinnacle. And that was ours at the last house we lived in. Oh, it sucked.
Yeah.
Literally, they would all come to our yard. You would see like clean yards and they're like 2 feet of leaves. So that's across the street from us.
Oh.
And I'm like, ha, 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 ha. We were looking and there are so many leaves. I'm like, welcome to the neighborhood.
When I'm walking the dog, I am the person who, if there are leaves on your sidewalk,
purposely.
I will
Well,
shuffle my feet
whenever
through
we
'em.
walk to food for Mile High Con, there's us just walking through the deepest leaves off
Yes.
the sidewalk and
Yeah.
everybody else just humors us.
Yeah.
Just humors us.
This
That's
goes-
really how they process us at all, is to humor us.
Or it goes back to that whole fear thing you were talking about earlier.
Just let her walk through the leaves. Just
let her go.
don't piss her off. All right. Well, you guys can find us at www.mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com. There's a form on there to send us stories about anything you want to. If you were a werewolf,
If you know anything about that belt, or if you have that belt, let us know.
And we also have an email, mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. Notice there's no ands in there like there are in the social media we discussed at the beginning. If you ever want images, we post those on our Instagram. Every little once in a while, I have to squeak one onto Facebook because Instagram is a pain from the business suite in Facebook, which is where I post all of it.
Sometimes,
and I'll be like, this photo doesn't work. And I'm like,
or
why?
it'll say, this photo has a link. And you're like, this photo is trying to sell something. And it's,
well,
no,
it'll
it's
tell me this one's the wrong aspect ratio, so you can click on it to
Yeah.
edit it, but then they've blocked, so all of the edits are blocked, and you can't just
I've
manually
not
crop
seen
it.
that.
Yeah, I keep running into that. That's why I post on Facebook sometimes. So there's no way for me to manually crop like I would in a real piece of
Right.
software. No, it's, I want to select this crop, or this crop, and then I'll just get that little red circle over it like, no, this won't work. So there's no way for me to crop it.
Because for work, I use that all the time. It's
I know.
like, you can't use this. Well, then crop it, fucker.
Nope.
Wow.
I've run into ones that I can't.
Did not
And
know
then it
that.
annoys me because I'm like, I really wanted to post this picture. I ran into a bunch of those last week.
Yes,
actually.
I saw the pictures. I'm just learning so much today.
Right. There we go. Wow. Grotesque versus gargoyle.
Yes.
Not being able to crop some shit. I mean, just let me manually, just give me a tool. And I will crop it.
Maybe when we're all meta, we'll be able to.
Hey, I feel like we didn't even celebrate our 50th episode being last week.
That's true, because this is
We hit our
episode 51.
episode. So we'll have to pay more attention and celebrate when we hit 100.
Yes.
We did get a badge that I haven't posted yet from Buzzsprout.
Perhaps we'll even celebrate 75.
Maybe. And maybe we'll just be so busy like we were this time that we won't. Anyway, you guys, thanks for listening. Please like, rate, share, review, and do all that good stuff to get us out there.
Yes, tell your friends about us. Tell them how much fun we are to listen to and how absolutely bananas we are.
Bug shit, banana, fuck. What is it?
Bat shit, bug fuck, banana sandwich.
There you go. I feel like mine's more rational in a certain part of it. But anyway,
Yes,
that's it. And
I have to give credit to Jen Lancaster, who is an author
that's right.
who came up with that first. Or at least she wrote it down.
she shared it first.
She did.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.